Hello everyone, this is Chris Anson, and in this video I'm going to show you how to enhance your DJI DNG RAW files using Perfectly Clear version 3.5. I've chosen Photoshop as my RAW editor, and so I've opened the original DJI DNG RAW file in Photoshop. I've opened it as an object or a smart object, and you can tell because of the little icon in the bottom right here. The reason I did this is because I want to be able to move into and out of Perfectly Clear as I look at the image and want to make enhancements or changes to it. Having a smart object attached with Perfectly Clear gives me the ability to do that. So now let's take a look at what the Perfectly Clear adjustment looks like. I'm going to turn on the smart filter, and that's a pretty big difference from the original starting place. Now, had I not already made these adjustments, to launch Perfectly Clear, I would come up to the Filter menu, come down to Authentic Imaging, and choose it from here. Since I've already made adjustments to it that I'm going to share with you, all I need to do is come down here and click on Perfectly Clear to launch it. Actually, it was a double click. So here's what the image looks like in Perfectly Clear. You can see the white border around it because I had straightened it in Photoshop. So when I'm doing landscapes and cityscape types of images, I find that the tone, color, details, and graduated filter are my favorite, and I would encourage you to explore whatever options help you to create the look that you're going for. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through and I'm going to turn off all of these adjustments, and we're going to go through them one by one. Before we do that though, some very good places that I start with Perfectly Clear are the auto exposure, and you can see that makes adjustments to these sections over here. The sections that are active are highlighted. You can see tone and details are highlighted. Another preset that I found was very useful for these kinds of images is outdoor. Now with outdoor, again, it made slightly different changes to tone and details. So now I'm going to cancel out of here. I'm going to reopen so that we've got all the original settings. And then I'm going to turn off each one of these. So now let's take a look at tone and expand it by clicking on the little triangle. I'm going to turn each of these off. You can see as we turn these back on what affect the setting of exposure. I chose the medium setting on this. It worked fine. I tried moving the slider back and forth, and I wasn't able to achieve a better result than the medium setting. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on depth, and this has two settings that are important to know about. They have the high contrast setting and the high definition setting. When I'm working with these images, I always try both. Hopefully you can see on your screen that the high definition image isn't as contrasty, but it shows me more detail. In this case, I like the high contrast option better. And then of course you can change the amount, and I found that 75 was my preferred setting. And then the last is light diffusion, and I added a small amount of light diffusion just to soften this. So now let's take a look at color. That was the next one that I used. Let's turn that on. And you can see that that has a pretty profound effect on the look of this. Now I would recommend always setting up tone first and then coming down to color. I'm going to turn these off and then turn them back on one by one. So the color restore restores colors into the image so that it looks more like the original image that you saw when you photographed it. Now color vibrancy is similar to color restore. Color restore is a more sophisticated and advanced feature, but I find often that combining the two, that gives me a more satisfying look. And then color fidelity. Here we have the ability to either use standard or vivid. This is what vivid looks like. And that was too strong for me. Even in changing the slider, I found that standard was what I wanted at a 50. The next piece let's look at in color is the Sky Enhance. I'm going to turn that on. You can see that I chose a strength of 50, and when I click on the drop-down menu, you'll see that there are many other options. This is what the Blue Sky Royal looks like. This is what the Blue Sky Aquamarine looks like. I decided the Blue Sky Cerulean was the one that I liked the best for this image. It just had the look and feel that I wanted. So that takes care of color. Now I did have detail, and I'll come back to that, but I typically will turn sharpening. Detail has to do with sharpening and noise reduction. I'm going to leave that off for the moment, and I'm going to come down to the graduated filter. Let's go ahead and turn that on and see what that does. So in this case, I used the graduated filter to create a vignette using the radial gradient. And I was able to control both the inside and outside of that. You'll see that I didn't do anything on the inside, although I could have made all these different changes to that. My focus was on the outside. And let's just take a quick peek at what our options are here. So when I placed the center here, I placed it approximately here. And then in shape, when I click it down, you can see that the blue is the outside of the vignette and the red is the inside of the vignette. Size gives me the ability to change the size, and again, it's going to show me using the blue and the red colors what that looks like. Feather has to do with how soft the edges are on the vignette. If I move it clear to here, you can see that that's pretty harsh. Bring it back to here and soften it, and about there. Now, if I want to go back to exactly what I had, I can come down to the bottom left corner here and click on undo, and you can see that's taken me back to 79. And then of course we can rotate it if we have a situation where we need something at an angle, a vignette at an angle, and we make it elliptical or oblong shaped. We've got the ability to position it with this tool. And then let's take a look at what each of these changes do to the image. I'm going to turn these all off. So now I'm going to turn exposure back on, and exposure affects how dark or light the outer edge of the vignette is. Contrast will affect the midtones, darkening or lightening them. In the case of highlights, I brought the highlights up a little bit in the outside, shadows down to -50, and saturation I backed off to -40 so that it would draw the eye more into the center of the image. You can see at the outer edges here in the vignette that the desaturation helps that not stand out quite so much. It's subtle, and you may not be able to easily see that on your screen, but it's something that I typically do in my vignettes. So now the last step is to come back up to details. Let's open that and turn that on. In this case, I have sharpening set at 100. I have the noise reduction set at default, and in zooming in, if I press the Z key on the keyboard, that'll zoom me into 100%, and as I drag around and look, I'll press the Z key again and come back out. So at this point, we're done. We would click apply. That will bring it back into Photoshop or whatever the editor is that you're using. And now we have the perfectly clear adjustments that we made applied to the image in Photoshop. So once again, often with my photos, I will output a JPEG and take a look at them over a period of a few days to a couple weeks, and periodically go back in and make adjustments and fine tuning on them. And again, to do that, all we need to do is double click on Perfectly Clear, the smart filter, and we can make whatever adjustments and fine tuning that we want. So what we did today was we opened a DJI DNG RAW file in Photoshop as a smart object, and then we applied the Perfectly Clear filter to it. We went into Perfectly Clear, We made adjustments to tone, color, details, and graduated filter. Now there's lots of other options in here, but these are the ones that I find most useful for me when I'm doing these types of images. So this is Chris Anson. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you found it helpful. Thanks for watching.